Today's Dear Frannie question gets right to the heart of franchising. What is the franchisee responsible for, and what is the franchisor responsible for? Spoiler, James said it simply and clearly. The franchisee runs the business, the franchisor runs the brand. So, if it's that simple, where do we keep getting stuck? That's exactly what James and I dug into today. And if you're struggling with where to draw the line, running everything through that one lens clears it right up. Let's jump in. Welcome to this week's episode of Dear Frannie. I am your host, Katherine LeBlanc.
And I'm her co-host, James.
Hey, James. Excited to jump in with you as always.
Let's do it.
First, let's talk about what we are seeing lately. And I'm going to tell you first.
Talk to me.
So I went to IFE in May, which is the International Franchise Expo, where a bunch of franchise brands go and they try and attract prospective franchisees into their brand. And it was really interesting because as I was walking up and down the aisles, I noticed how many specialized kid concepts there were. And it made me think about the kind of rush to specialize in food concepts. You know what I mean? Like the chicken finger concepts or the slider concepts, or, we're only going to do one thing, but we're going to do it really, really well. And I was looking at things like there was a concept that was throw your kid a pop star party. And there was one that was like a race car concept, but it was specifically for kids under 5 years old. And so it made me think about, okay, what is the addressable market for kids 3 to 5? Because that's what these concepts were targeting. And then, simplicity in franchising is what we're all chasing. But when does simplicity like become so simple that you are not broad enough to actually make money and be profitable long term? So anyway, it's just something that I've been sitting with around, like, how do we build simple concepts, but also build something that's going to be profitable in 10 and 20 and 30 years?
Yeah, it's a good conversation and a big one. I think a couple things. One, as given that you're the host of this, the failure to invite your co-host, all expenses paid, that this thing is really a problem. So I'd like all of our listeners to
Next year. I'll put it in the budget for next year.
send complaints and so I've been ostracized and left out. So I didn't get to have this experience. Secondly, I think, I love the franchise ability of non-food concepts that are low expense, high margin. I think that the TAM associated with 3 to 5 year olds is obviously slowing given the demographic data of people
Mhm.
not having children as much, but there's
Right.
still kids out there. I think, if you can create an offering that attacks just a market, it depends on what your goal is for the franchise or system, in my opinion. So if it's,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I'm not looking to meet everybody's need. I'm just looking to, drive MRR or ARR or whatever the measurement or measuring stick is of top line, bottom line. If me and I mean, we're moving into lifestyle businesses, right? The new
Right.
generation is much different than, thank God, the baby boomer generation. Let's have a conversation about them needing to retire. But like, the new generation, my children included, right? 17 to 3, and then moving up, like they want to own businesses that, your ROIC is high,
Mhm.
your outlay of cash is low. So if, I'm coordinating a pop star party for 20 kids and I can make, 2 grand a week and per party or whatever it is, like, and I don't have to lay up, but it's not a bad idea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you can get real nichey, but I mean, geez, like what you got the whole counter in the food world of like the veto vote. So you have everything on the menu. And I think that, it's really the goal of the franchisor. I also think to your point though, that's clarity associated with the franchisee when they're onboarding is like, look, we're going after 3 to 5 year olds. So if you want to, we don't come looking for 9 year olds here. You
Right.
feel so. I feel like it gets back into our conversations of expectations of
Mm.
of it. But I mean, I think take food out, man. It's expensive to get in the food business. So
Yeah.
sign me up for the I connect two things and bring some stuff. I mean, it's like what the balloon bit, like like there's all
Yes.
kinds of them. So
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think it really gets back to franchisor structure at the end of the day, though. You know?
Well, I think franchisor structure and franchisee expectations, which I think we're going to get into today, but
Yep.
I guess I go back to my experiences with niche businesses that are hot and pop and then the runway fizzles and it's like, okay, well how are we going to support or pivot the brand when that runway or the hot item fizzles,
Yeah.
right?
Right. I mean, like, that's a really good point, right? So are we going to when I don't know, is it gonna fizzle that kids don't wanna hang out with pop stars? I mean, I don't think you're gonna run out of kids, and I don't think you're gonna run out of pop stars. But I mean,
Mhm.
like, to the extent if that trend goes
But, I
left, where do
mean,
we
yeah,
adapt?
no, with the trend of, like, that's the hot thing for them to do for their birthday party is going to
Right.
fizzle because the
Yeah.
next hot thing is going to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe, again, it's like expectation associated with investment relative to the franchisee. Eyes wide
Mhm.
open, that's obviously gotta be a FDD disclosure of potential risk, right? That fad changes, free legal advice, not giving legal advice. But I think, that lies on the franchisor to say it's sorta like, remember back in the day when everybody was doing the 99-cent cleaner thing when dry cleaners were a thing and they would call
Yeah.
it like
Mhm.
99-cent cleaner, then they would change it to a $1.99
Right.
cleaner,
Yeah. Yeah,
two
yeah.
ninety nine
Yeah.
cents cleaner. I think like as long as, to quote one of the greatest movies ever, something about Mary, 7-minute abs. What about when somebody comes out with 6-minute abs? I
Right.
think you're gonna have to adapt or at least, go very hard in the paint for the few years you can.
Right.
It's not my style, but I think it's something that a franchisor and franchisee need to be ready to move on,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and I guess it's a good question to arm franchisees with in a discovery process of like, okay, well, what's your
Yeah,
plan for 10 years from now? What's your vision? How are
right.
we going to maintain our relevancy and
But I
ensure
mean, then again, are you push back on that, right? Like as a prospective franchisee, shouldn't you like how much obligation is on the franchisor to like tell you fads could change? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you're signing up for 7-minute abs.
yeah.
You gotta know that there could be a 5-minute ab, right? Like
Yeah, I don't know. I've been on the receiving end of the fad fading. So,
yeah. I mean, what's it like when a fad fades?
yeah, I mean,
I've
it's
just
hard.
watched brands die. I haven't seen fads.
Well, I guess that's the point, right? It's like how do you continuously create a moat around your offering that allows you to stay laser focused on your target audience and your core offering while evolving in a way that is going to maintain your moat?
Yeah, I think that that is why you hire a really, really brilliant strategy officer slash marketing person, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, that's a big
I
question.
also have to
And
listen to them, so
well, yeah,
we'll
but
work on that part.
to your point, I think it's definitely the first thing that the FDD and the franchisor has to meet, and secondarily, the franchisee needs to like be ready to ask.
Yeah. Well, let's get into
Really
that.
good one.
Our Dear Frannie question today is what should I expect of my franchisees? And I think this goes back to, to me, it's a very broad question, but the thought behind it would be like, okay, you now have signed a franchisee into your system, or you have 20 franchisees into your system, and you have outlined in your FDD and in your ops manual, here's the offering. And then at what point are you also communicating to the franchisee, okay, and it's your responsibility to run your business. And this is how you run your business, right? And as we think about the people coming into franchising, we've talked about this before of the dilution of the candidate because it is so expensive to get a franchisee into the system based on what we've done as an industry to increase those costs. And so you're once they're ready to sign, you kind of have a dilution of the candidate because okay, well, it took me $20,000 to hire this candidate or not hire, but procure
Land.
this candidate, and so I've got to sign them. But then it's the level of business experience combined with the level of brand experience combined with the industry experience that, you then as the franchisor have to train them on. And so at what point do you expect them to come like, what do you expect them to come to the table with, and then what do you expect them to figure out on their own?
Bro, like really broad question, right?
Yeah.
So, I think, let's leave out the what do we expect of the franchisee from a prospective candidate
Yeah.
standpoint because, I think you as a franchisor should know kind of what you're getting relative to business acumen and experience through the the discovery process on the up to
Mhm.
signing. I think not an easier, but a cleaner answer to that is to chunk it. And let's chunk it. What should I expect from signing
Yeah.
through operating, right?
Mhm.
And then maybe you chunk it signing to opening, opening to operating. So opening to operating, I think you expect a couple of things, right? You definitively expect them to meet the obligations of the franchise agreement,
Mhm.
right? Like as a franchisor. I think you definitively expect them to give the energy and efforts associated with what is required of them or their organization associated with the franchise itself. I
Mhm.
think compliance with the franchise ops manuals and the brand offering is sort of, you know,
Yeah.
table stakes.
Mhm.
But I also feel like, there is certain expectation of general business commitment and investment. Tactically speaking, you better own your P&L,
Well,
right? Like,
and do you think that I guess what I see is that as franchisors, we're often scared to tell the franchisee, this is your business. You are responsible for running it and making it successful. Like that is the responsibility of the franchisee. Our franchisor responsibility is to give you the support materials to help you be successful. But if you're not invested in a way that I guess I'm
I
uh,
agree.
thinking about conversations that I've had with franchisees, and actually, I had this conversation the other day. It's with a franchisee that not a brand, not one of my franchisees, and the feedback was, well, the marketing is just not there, and I didn't ask this, and I should have, but I'm like, okay, well, what did you do for your marketing, right? Like, what it is your responsibility to drive customers through your door, and so when you say the corporate marketing is flat or not working, what exactly about it is not working? Because there is only so much you can do from a corporate marketing perspective. Like you can't be out in the community. You can't be drumming up the excitement for
Yeah,
the
I think
organization.
you're right. Like, we have to say to the franchisee, this is your business to run. We are giving you the parameters and the brand that sort of fills in the blank of that business, right? So
Mhm.
you are running a business that is a franchisee of a brand. It's not you are a franchisee of a brand. You're running a
Right.
business. So, I think the clear expectation should be like you're running a business. And when you're running a business, you have to hire and fire. You have to
Mhm.
manage your employees. You have to meet customer expectation within certain parameters set by the brand, but you got to
Mhm.
own your P&L, right? You
Mhm.
got to
Yeah.
you got to drive local store efforts, right? You got to get out into the community. You can't expect, a brand depending on X, Y, and Z size to dial down into the 4 square blocks and
Mhm.
4 square miles. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think, if you're going to be a franchisee and maybe franchisors have failed in this, it's not like you're, just sitting here ensuring that, the lights come on, right? Like
Mhm.
this is, you better be ready to run a business. So I think from a franchisor's perspective, it's, you're going to run a business. You have the capability of running that business given the tools that I'm going to provide you to fill in the blanks
Mhm.
for what type of business that is,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
From a
Well, I think
franchisee perspective, it's different, right?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think too, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about, there's, I think there's a difference between people who are coming in to run a business that is hard, like
Yep.
restaurants, versus a person that's coming in to run a business that is more passion forward, like pets or kids or creative. And
Yeah.
so, when you're running kind of a passion play franchise, and that's the type of person that you're attracting in, I think that that's where I see some breakdown happen in the like, okay, well, this is what it like the business acumen ledge is higher because I think from I would assume, and maybe I'm wrong in my assumption, but I would assume that most restaurant franchise B candidates understand how hard, or at least that restaurant business is harder.
Yeah. I think it's a massive assumption. I think that's why,
Okay.
as a restaurant franchisor, you have to be wary of the first time restaurant owner operators of like
Mhm.
if you're rolling with that, like I've seen insert profession that wanted to get in the food business that never been in the food business, and then
Right.
they're like, and they could come from a very hard profession,
Mhm.
insert medical, lawyer, whatever. and then bam, like the restaurant business is just not easy, right?
Right.
So I think, you got to be really direct and selective when you're bringing somebody into an industry that they have no experience with. But
Right.
to your point of passion play, right? Like if, we're doing something that is just as difficult but different, but is relies upon somebody just believing in doing this, right? There's a great brand out called Special Strong or something that's special needs or disabilities
Mhm.
children that provides it's a franchise offering that you run a franchise within like a fitness facility and you outsource certain space for doing these wonderful things. Like that's a
Mhm.
passion play, right?
Right.
So, I think that relies heavily on person's commitment to the motives of the organization. I do
Mhm.
think the real simple takeaway would be, and I hesitate of giving it just a definitive, but if I had to put it in one line, I think the expectation of the franchisor should be to the franchisee, you own your business. I own my brand.
Right.
And that's where I think the lines have to run. You
Yeah.
know?
No, I don't think it's too simple. I think that that's really well said of, you and then but where it falls off is how are we communicating that
Uh,
expectation and at what touch points? And we could go into a whole another
I
20
think it
minute
falls off
discussion
all
on
the
that.
time there, right? Like the franchisee starts expecting more, the franchisor. That is where the rubber meets the
That's
road,
right.
and that's
Yeah.
where the franchise business consultant and or the franchisor and franchisee have to continually communicate on expectation.
Yeah, and I think that's what we get scared of as franchisors because we are
For
so
sure.
scared of making the franchisee angry or upset or disengaged. And I would caution founders and CEOs from saying yes to too many requests from the franchisee and establishing even maybe internally, right? It starts with your internal communications, with your internal shared language around we own the brand, they own the business. So then
Yeah.
what does that mean? So if
Yeah.
we put everything through that lens, then that means they own the P&L and we are consulting on what a benchmark P&L should look like. And maybe it's using that as a framework to then create the support systems and create the stuff that's necessary to run the brand. I mean, look, on the marketing side, I can't tell you how many CEOs I've talked to that are like, I just want to do the marketing for the franchisee because they don't do it the way that we would. And it's like I would love that too, but it's just not possible. It just is unless you want to pay for and hire a marketing person to sit in every single location. I can't do that. And
Yeah.
so that's where a lot of stress I think comes from at least like expectations being set on different departments to kind of do it for the franchisee. And then the moment we start doing that, that's when some stuff can break down and erode.
Yeah.
And now we don't know what expectations should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's parameters and tools, right? That
Yeah.
the certain channels in the franchisor business have to provide to the franchisee. I would say, in the asterisk of you own your business, we own the brand, relative to the implications of the P&L, we as a franchisor do have a certain obligations to your P&L, right? Paper costs, COGS, right? So if I'm requiring you to,
Mhm.
pricing, so like there's some, P&L implications that the brand brings to the business, but at the end of the day, the business has got to manage the inventory and the waste and the whatnot. So I mean,
Well, but
that's
even
where
I
the
love that framework too of like this is what we are committing to you to do to drive profitability. We are committing to drive as low as possible COGS. We are committing to, you know, XXX.
Yep.
And I think that clarity around expectations in life, right? It
Yeah.
creates easier communications. Everybody knows where they stand with each other. And I think that it gets lost on how to do that in franchise brands, but some of these frameworks that you've mentioned, I think can really help set that up. And it's about having a shared language so that when you say
Yeah.
we own the brand, you own the business, you now define what does that mean?
Yeah. And
And
what are the
then
implications to the business from the brand and the
right.
brand to the business? So,
Yeah. And then it's a quick like now when you say it, you know what you mean. But I
let's
think
patent that. Let's trademark
hey,
that, and people can send
trademark
us
it.
royalties, and I can go to the
TM.
conventions with you.
There you go.
Mm.
Now that's how we'll make our millions.
That's
But look, I think that's when we talk about our 3 takeaways, I think that that's definitely one of them for me is, we own the brand, you own the business. I think the second one would be helping to define how the franchisor is helping the franchisee be more profitable, because we are always talking about profitability and driving profitability to the bottom line, but there are some limitations on how the franchisor can do that. So getting clarity around how, as a franchisor, I am driving profitability to your bottom line. And I think the third takeaway is I was really interested in your take on the specialized children's business, and maybe there is something there that I'm just a little jaded on.
Well, I mean, look, I think you raise a really good flag associated with niche or fad oriented or like whatever, how are we going to categorize it, right? So, I mean, I think one of those, what my takeaways would be, go eyes wide open
Mhm.
into what the actual offering is, and don't hesitate to discuss on both sides, you know, the reality of the offering and the potential implications to it. The FDD requires that, but more often than not, that gets legalese over, not by lawyers per se, but the actual readers of the document don't invest in those sort of like these things could happen conversations,
Mhm.
right? So I think regardless of offering, and we talked about this before, it's just us understanding as franchisor and franchisee the implications and complications of the relationship via the brand and the offering, and being open about all of those potentials. I think secondly, I do think the owning the business and owning the brand context is really a good litmus test,
Uh-huh.
as long as we are understanding where those may intertwine and or push and pull. And I think, you raised a really good point about, you got to set some parameters associated with how much you have to do for your franchisee, how much you want to do for your
Mhm.
franchisee, and
Mhm.
then when you either become a problem to the franchisee becomes a problem
Mm.
to you.
Mm.
Like, I think we just underestimate how complicated the relationship is
Yeah,
in the franchise or franchisee space.
that is an understatement.
We can talk about that in our next
Yeah.
one.
Okay,
You know,
I'll write that down for our next topic.
there we go.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and if this conversation sounds familiar, you are not alone and you are right on time. We thank you so much for joining us.